This is the
Five Starr
Podcast.
Let me talk to you.
Hi.
What do you guys want to talk about?
Thanks, guys. Back to you.
I will say one positive thing about these shorter Monday podcasts. It makes the recording process a whole lot easier. I don't have to stop and start the audio in between segments to make sure everything recorded correctly. Doesn't take an hour and a half to upload them to Rumble and YouTube. Yeah, there's one thing I've noticed now that I'm relocated out of Pittsburgh. I mean, the new internet service I use here, God, it takes forever to get videos processed. It's funny, too, because the Wi-Fi connectivity is fine. I don't have any issues streaming videos or getting websites to come up. But it takes like 2 hours to get podcasts uploaded to YouTube and Rumble. So we're here, and we're ready to dive into Retro Raw in just a few minutes. Before we do that, make sure that if y'all are tuning into the Five Starr Wrestling Report for the first time, subscribe, comment, and leave a like on the video today. We are on YouTube and Rumble on Mondays and Fridays for new content. It is the wrestling podcast nobody knows but everybody needs. Our new go-to phrase. I should probably trademark it before somebody takes it. Of course, I should have nothing to worry about because, well, that's our gimmick. Nobody watches the podcast anyway, so why would anyone try to steal our logo? I was trying to see if there was anything interesting to cover before we sat down to talk about this god-awful Raw program. Not that I'm trying to delay the inevitable. I wouldn't necessarily call it a slow news week in the land of wrestling, but really nothing I want to talk about at great length. And that's the problem with me being so out of the loop with modern wrestling now. Like, ever since I stopped covering AEW content and quit the SmackDown reports, I literally have no interest in anything going on in the wrestling news. It's all so boring to me. I know people have been speculating about the story that came out last week regarding Vince trying to kickstart another project. Whatever that means, I don't even know. And the problem is, based on the articles that came out, it doesn't look like it's going to be anything wrestling related. Although he is probably going to have his crew of office lapdogs that no longer work for WWE, and they're probably going to be attached to the operation. So, of course, you're talking about people like Kevin Dunn and presumably Johnny Ace. I don't think there's a way Bruce Pritchard could get roped into that right now because he's still technically employed with WWE. Unless his contract is coming up soon or there's a way he can weasel out of that deal. He and Vince have a very odd relationship, so I put nothing past him. But, when I read that headline, it really didn't faze me because it is the exact kind of thing I would expect a Vince McMahon to do. The guy's a workaholic. I don't even think the word retirement exists in that guy's vocabulary. I think the biggest concern for a lot of people, just going off history, it's the track record of Vince when it comes to trying things outside the world of wrestling. Whether you're talking the Bodybuilding Federation in the early 90s, the XFL, his god-awful movie production business, they've all been complete and utter flops. And yeah, while there's something admirable about the idea of trial and error with business operations, at the same time, we're also not talking about a fresh young guy who graduated from Stanford or Yale. Guy's freaking 80 years old. I mean, he's probably going to be dead in the next 5 to 10 years, God forbid. The hell is he doing trying to kickstart a new operation? What major network or streaming service is going to even want to remotely attach themselves to that? I mean, even if Vince gets off scot-free from all these allegations, there's still going to be that underlying stain after the fact. It's only going to generate negative publicity for anybody that tries to partner with him. So I don't know. Again, this is all under the presumption that it's not wrestling related. I'm still not entirely convinced it won't be. Trust me, Vince is a very senile, bitter old man. We've seen the calculated, underhanded things that guy would do when it comes to business relationships, even amongst his own family members. You don't think Vince would try to look for any excuse to go after Hunter? He's basically been blacklisted by Stephanie, Linda, and Shane. Vince may have lost the battle when it came to stepping down as chairman of WWE. But as far as he's concerned, that war is still on, brother. As long as he's got the funds to do it, no matter how abysmal it turns out to be, because you know it's going to suck. At the same time, you know Vince is salivating at one last ditch effort to get back at the WWE. And more specifically, Hunter. No, he's not going into the grave without getting the last laugh. So we'll see what happens there. It's definitely something to keep on your radar. If there's one thing I've learned from Vince McMahon in my lifetime, you can never roll him out of anything. But that's enough of that nonsense. Retro Raw. Here we go. Seven more weeks, people. 7 weeks. And then we can finally put the year 1995 to bed. Hopefully never to speak of it again. I'm seriously contemplating doing some kind of countdown timer as a special effect. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. We're so close. I should get a public service award for going back and rewatching all these retro Raws. Like, some sort of validation accolade, like, congrats. You managed to watch 50-something weeks of the worst period in WWF history. And you didn't have a nervous breakdown along the way. Well, at least not to your knowledge. You don't know what goes on when the cameras aren't rolling. So let's get into the horror show that these numbnuts try to subject me to this week. We've basically had all the primary Survivor Series matches announced. So at this point, we're just kind of waiting around for them to fill in the gaps with the rest of the peanut gallery, i.e. the underneath guys. I presume most of them will just get shoehorned into random elimination tag matches. Oh, by the way, for anybody wondering, no, I have absolutely no clue what the rest of that Survivor Series card is without having to look it up. I know of 2 matches offhand. The wild card tag match they booked a few weeks back with no explanation as to why babyfaces and heels are being forced to tag with each other. And then, obviously, Bret and Diesel for the WWF strap. Outside those 2 matches, zero idea what the rest of that card is shaping up to be. I mean, they only just got back into highlighting the issues with the Razor and the 1-2-3 kid this week. Well, I should say Vince kind of explained it in the cold open here. Originally, the kid was supposed to be the special guest ref for a title match between Razor and Psycho Sid for Raw this week. But apparently they had another one of their altercations on Superstars or something. So in order to prevent any biased officiating, the match was now going to be non-title. So in other words, fuck you, Sid. You thought you were getting a title match this week? Well, plans change, pally. I mean, if I were Sid, I'd be justifiably pissed. The hell? You book the guy in a title match, but then decide last minute to make it non-title because you're afraid the referee's going to screw the champion over on purpose? How about you just assign a regular referee? You ever think about that? So anyway, that was the main story going into this show. For the record, anybody that couldn't already see how that match was going to pan out, just based on everything they set up in the cold open, might have been your first rodeo. Oh yeah, I should also point out, this was the go-home show to the pay-per-view. And again, I pretty much knew 20% of the card going in. The build for this thing has been absolutely atrocious. So how proper is it that we open this shit show with a match featuring, well, quite literally, shit? It's supposed to be Hunter Hearst Helmsley versus the Hog Farmer. If you'll remember, the storyline with Hunter at the moment is that he's carrying around his signature perfume to cleanse the air of the filth that is the WWF locker room. So naturally, he finds himself in a feud with the guy that works in a pig farm for a living. Figures. So right as the match is about to get underway, Godwin takes his bucket of slop and then dumps it all over his head, basically as a means to gross out Hunter and send him fleeing. And so as Hunter tries to distance himself from Godwin, he ends up slipping on the ring mat and wiping out, consequently rolling around in the slop anyway and then taking a stomach bump on it. And, well, that was basically it. A no contest finish via guy doesn't want to wrestle another guy caked in pig slop. Yet somehow I'm supposed to buy that Hunter is the bad guy in all this. I don't know about you. I'm not really somebody that enjoys grappling with people that smell like hog feces. But hey, there's a fetish out there for anything. I'm sure Vince would have gotten off to it, judging that he's the sadistic fuck that even booked this fiasco. I also have to keep reminding people of this because I find it so humorous. Bear in mind, this is the same Hunter that is about to become WWF champion in about 4 years. Main eventer. Pay-per-view headliner. And not to mention the guy who wound up becoming the full-time CEO of WWE. It's amazing how that shit works. So then we come back for a Shawn Michaels Fap-Off session. A company VTR where they yet again try to force-feed you the propaganda that he's a likable person. It's practically like watching legacy media. You see the reality in front of you. Your eyes are not playing tricks. There is absolutely nothing discernibly likable or relatable about a guy you know just got his ass kicked in a fight. Yet at the same time, they're trying to make you think he's cool or that he's a badass. The word Vince used here was resilient. It is a never say die attitude that Shawn Michaels lives by every day of his life. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's so Orwellian in nature. Let's just pretend that this guy who's done nothing but cause problems behind the scenes and acts like an unprofessional dick in public, let's pretend he's one of the people. Let's make him somebody the fans could never detest. And all the sheep that had the wool pulled over their eyes for years, God, they still buy into that horse shit. Unreal. So then we had the official in-ring debut of Ahmed Johnson. Simultaneously, it was probably the last match Jake Steele ever had. This poor guy. They had to scoop him up on a spatula by the time this was all done. You know, the funny thing is the match only went like 90 seconds, and it was still the drizzling shits. Somehow in that 90 seconds, Ahmed proceeded to whiff a left-handed clothesline, hit a horribly botched spinebuster on Steele, and then he won with a Tiger Bomb. A Tiger Bomb. You could not have paid me to take that fucking move from this guy. Keep in mind, too, there are still wrestling fans out there, some odd years later, that actually thought Ahmed Johnson was a missed opportunity. That he was somehow going to become the second coming of the Junkyard Dog. Yeah, you want to know what the problem was? JYD was actually over. Ahmed Johnson was not. By the way, this is all I got out of Ahmed's post-match promo. Sid! Bulldog! I'm telling you, baby. Do not come to that ring and have nothing, G. If you do, I'ma break you off something proper. Well, he started off okay. I picked up on at least 70% of the vocabulary this time, as opposed to like 10. Then we had some solid ASMR. A dual screen promo sit down with Bret Hart and Diesel ahead of their title match. Whew. How much more comatose can you get? God, the next step above that would be an NPR interview. I'm being partially flippant, but at the same time, not really. Especially by the time this thing was over. Good God. I was about ready to take a nap. They just went on and on and on and on and fucking on forever. And you can imagine listening to short form Bret Hart or Diesel promos by themselves. Those are already hard to stand. But hearing both of them in the same segment for 5 straight minutes. Oh my God, it was excruciating. And like, I mean, I get it. There's obviously a lot of history here. You know, they cover the story dating all the way back to when Bret lost the title to Bob Backlund at Survivor Series last year. All the hurdles and obstacles he got thrown in his way since. The fact that he's only gotten 1 title shot since then, and it was back at the Royal Rumble in January. And remember in that match, Owen Hart interfered and screwed over both guys, so he never got a conclusive finish. So yeah, there's a lot of leftover bad blood between these two. I was mainly focusing on Diesel's expression here. It's so funny because ever since Jim Cornette coined the term boo-boo job face, anytime I see a guy who looks like he's clearly stewing about something, I can only automatically assume, yep, this guy's probably pissed off he's doing the job. And you saw it in this clip. Diesel scowling for pretty much the entire pre-tape. And like, yeah, you could easily blow it off and say, he's just being a heel. Normally, I would agree with that. But like, I don't know, dude. His delivery here, his general gives no fucks attitude, this is on full display. I think we saw a bit of the heated Kevin Nash at work here. The I'm over this place, I'm about ready to jump ship to the competition attitude. He and Razor alike. That's all I could think about during this promo. While they're both boring the brakes off of me and speaking in this monotone delivery for 5 minutes, I'm just watching Nash here like, you think this guy's pissed off that he's about to drop the belt on Sunday? I mean, I really tried to take notes here, but it was just borderline impossible. The 2 most boring promos on the entire fucking show. And they were both put together in a back and forth verbal here for like 5 minutes. And it's not like it ever got remotely heated. That's the part that infuriated me. Like, I'm waiting for somebody to get fucking angry. Put some honest to God emotion into this fiasco. But no. It was just Nash going, well, I think I'm the best. I've got the belt to prove it. And Bret Hart thinks he can stop me. I'd like to see him try. And then Bret responds with, well, I know I'm the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be, and I never got a fair shake at the belt, and this is my chance to right the wrong from January, and I'm looking forward to Sunday. What the hell is that Quagmire clip from Family Guy where he's like the air pilot or whatever? That's what this was. That was this whole fucking pre-tape. Bret Hart and Diesel or Quagmire being an airplane pilot. God. I just thought when this thing was over, wow. I'm really feeling the intensity in the room, brother. This is looking to be a knockdown, drag-out street fight. Can't wait to see these guys lock horns. No joke. 5 straight minutes of literally nothing but that. The most dull, lifeless banter you've ever heard. So then Mabel killed Roy Raymond. Figuratively and almost literally by the end. The first spot was Mabel face-palming Raymond and nearly dumping the guy right on the back of his neck. It was also simultaneously the most exciting thing in the entire match. The rest of it was the usual slow, plodding Mabel offense. Crowd was virtually dead the entire time. Nobody cared about this. He won with a sidewalk slam. By the way, I have to look this up here real quick, because I'm curious. So, they had an inset promo where The Undertaker was basically challenging Mabel to a fight at Survivor Series. Did they actually have a match? Better yet, was Mabel even booked on that card? I have to look this up out of curiosity now, because I legitimately don't know. Unless it was an angle they shot. So we have the Body Donnas, which is Skip Rad Rafford, Dr. Tom Pritchard, and the 1-2-3 Kid against the Underdogs. Marty Jannetty, Hakushi, Barry Horowitz, and Bob Holly. Good God in heaven. 18 minutes and 45 seconds they gave that match. Fuck. Oh, and a women's elimination match, too. Bertha Faye, Aja Kong, Tomoko Watanabe, and Lioness Osaka. Alundra Blaze, Kyoko Inoue, Saki Hizakiwa, and Kaparita Asari. I'm not very good at my female Japanese literature, I apologize. Goldust and Bam Bam, I knew about that match. Holy fuck, here it is. The Dark Side. Undertaker, Savio Vega, Fatu, and Henry O'Godwin against the Royals. King Mabel, Jerry Lawler, Isaac Yankem, and Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Okay. I'm not even capping, dude. I literally had no idea what that Survivor Series card was outside those 2 matches I talked about earlier. It is all a blur. A long forgotten about memory. When I was a kid, I saw that show and I said, yep, I'll probably never have to think about it again. Little did I know that I would be on YouTube and Rumble some odd years later doing retro recaps. That's an amazing match, by the way. The Royals. With fucking Isaac Yankem in there. By the way, that match is going to suck. Calling it right now. I have no memories of it. But just looking at the parties involved, there's no way that match is going to be good. So anyway, I guess we can talk about the main event now. Again, to reiterate the conversation we had earlier, in order to ensure that there was no prejudice officiating here from the 1-2-3 kid, the match that was originally supposed to be for the Intercontinental title, Razor versus Sid, it has now been changed to non-title. So their logic, rather than pull the kid from the match entirely and just put in a regular referee, that apparently went over everybody's heads. They absolutely needed to have the kid referee this match for reasons that were never explained at all. So it is now non-title, and I mean, Sid's always pissed off, so it's hard to tell, but I can only guess he was none too pleased about this call. By the way, Sean Waltman in a ref shirt, best look he's ever had. In fact, now that I've seen it, he would have been better off as a full-time ref. So the question here is, how do you go about a match like this when the end result is so patently clear it's not even funny? How do you get into it? Because evidently you're just waiting around for the finish, right? Well, to tell you the truth, the answer is you pretend the 1-2-3 kid clearly doesn't have some kind of ulterior motive going in. Suspension of disbelief, I believe, is the terminology. You know, I always say in wrestling that predictability isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just a matter of making the anticipation worthwhile so that when you get to the end result, it doesn't fall flat. And I will say, they did a decent job getting over the story that even though the kid looked like he was going to be an impartial referee the whole time, you could clearly tell that wasn't the case. You know, especially during the points where he had interference from Ted DiBiase and Shane Douglas on the floor. I mean, the whole thing essentially was a giant 4-on-1 handicap. You had Razor basically fighting Sid, Ted, Douglas, and the kid all at a given time. And that's not to underplay the work between Razor and Sid here, because I actually thought they had a pretty solid match. They played to Sid's strengths by letting him dominate the whole thing. And because Razor was constantly getting ganged up on, he at least had an outing. I did pop for the electric chair spot that Razor gave to Sid at the end. A, because of Sid's facial expression when he was up on Razor's shoulders. And B, when he actually took the bump, Sid got folded up like an accordion. It was the greatest bump Sid would ever take until the infamous leg break spot in WCW years later. Still the greatest bump in wrestling history, by the way. But, I mean, by and large, it was a very one-sided beatdown. Other than that hope spot Razor got with the electric chair spot, you know, he made a small little comeback in the closing moments when he was able to get Sid up in the Razor's edge position. And, of course, right as he's about to drop him, you see the kid yank Sid down. Then Sid gives Razor the jackknife powerbomb. 1, 2, 3. Super fast count from the kid. Because he had to make sure Razor stood no chance of kicking out. So he did the fast count anyway. even though Razor was basically rendered unconscious. And then you get the shot afterwards where DiBiase stuffs the $5 bill in Razor's mouth, which the kid then picks up and puts into his pocket. That actually kind of made me laugh. So, I mean, it's an obvious heel turn, yes. The writing's been on the wall with that since they teased the split like 8.5 months ago. Kind of got to a point where people were asking, are you actually going to pull the trigger anytime in the next millennium? Well, they did. And now they're trying to leave you with the suspicion that DiBiase bought him off, and that the kid is now a full-fledged member of the worst heel faction in wrestling history, the $1 Million Corporation, aka the land of misfit heel toys. You know, the angle itself I thought was good. Granted, they never explained why the 1-2-3 Kid needed to be a special guest referee for a non-title Razor and Sid TV match, other than for them to execute this pre-planned heel turn. But the actual angle was fine. You know, they're obviously setting up for the one final blow-off in the Razor Kid feud headed into 96. And this non-title victory for Sid essentially leads to... well, nothing, as a matter of fact. Because Sid's about to leave the company pretty soon, and I don't think he's going to be back until well into next year. So instead of him getting the IC title shot, they're instead going to give it to Goldust. A lot of weird moving parts in that timeline. But that was their go-home angle to the pay-per-view. As far as I know, I don't think the kid is booked on that Survivor Series card, is he? I literally just looked this up. I'm going to have to pull up the card again because I've already got brain damage and I can't remember stuff that I looked up 10 minutes ago. Let's see here. Survivor Series. Let's skip down to the results. Oh yeah, he is on the card. He's in the opener. He's a relegated member of the Body Donnas for one night only. Good Lord. Honestly, dude, if you just want to encapsulate the entirety of the problems with WWF in 1995, go to the wiki page for the Survivor Series 95 card, go to the results section, just look at that roster lineup. This is what they had to work with. This is like at least 90% of the roster on this one card. Christ almighty. But, I mean, one would presume he'll find a way to get involved in that wild card match and fuck over Razor. But aside from that, we got Bret and Diesel for the WWF title. And they're finally going to take the belt off Diesel. Thank Christ. A much-needed business move. I mean, TV ratings and live event sales took an absolute nosedive with Diesel as the champion. And while, to be fair, he wasn't the only cause for the declining viewership in WWF around this time, he was definitely a contributing factor. So they're moving away from that failed experiment. And they still got plenty of problems as we head into 96. But at least getting the title back on Bret is a way for them to temporarily stop the bleeding. Then, of course, they probably reopen that wound again when they put the belt on Shawn Michaels, and then business goes back into the gutter again. But we'll explore more of that timeline in the coming months. There's plenty more to come. But I guess on that note, we can wrap up this show. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and make sure you stop back on Friday for the territory coverage. And next week we will have Retro Raw and WWF Survivor Series 95. Should be a fun time. I say that absolutely facetiously. It's not going to be a good time at all. Thanks everybody for stopping in, and y'all take care. Peace out.